This is the Get Foxy Show once again. Thank you all for tuning in. Today's guest is Mercedes Lyson. Mercedes, thank you so much for taking the time to be on this podcast. You have a podcast called Your Purpose is Beauty, and it can be found on your website over at l'amouretlamusique.com. And I wanted to talk to you about this because your podcast, oh my gosh, it's such a beautiful podcast.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
It's one of those shows I tuned in, and your voice on that podcast is just so soothing. But at the same time, you're talking about a wide array of subjects that I felt like my listeners would really gel with. You're talking about alternative health, you're talking about beauty products, you're talking about uh, different sociological things. You're even talking about house music.
I am, yes. I'm a very eclectic person.
So, how did you kind of come into this? Did this sort of choose you, or did you sort of choose this profession yourself?
There's a lot to unpack there. So the podcast is really an outgrowth of work that I have been doing since 2014 when I started a YouTube channel. And the impetus for that, it goes back even a little bit further. I was having some health challenges around 2008, 2009. So my foray into holistic health and wellness is probably that unique. I feel like a lot of people come into those proclivities with some sort of health challenge, which I had. And at the time, I was really kind of unsatisfied with the directions that Western medicine was going to take me in and trying to get a diagnosis. So, kind of divine timing on my side, I ended up starting to see an acupuncturist with no real background in acupuncture. I didn't know much about it. It was a friend of a friend, and it basically sort of changed my life, which was why I was so excited to hear from you as an acupuncturist, because that was really the beginning of my journey into this whole world. So in addition to acupuncture, over 10 years ago at this point, solving my acute health problem, it also instigated this deeper awakening about just what I can do to engender vibrant health in a sustainable way. And I have actually had a very longstanding interest in beauty really since childhood. And as I was kind of having this bigger awakening about what my life looked like and lifestyle choices, a lot of that started to coalesce around personal care products and beauty. So at the time I was getting into this was now like 2010 to 2012. There was like a very nascent community of green beauty bloggers and then YouTubers. And the internet was, I always talk about how different the internet was back then. It was just a very different space, and blogging and YouTubing was, not what it is today with rampant influencer marketing and things like that. So it was really this very intimate and helpful community of very like-minded and passionate people. So I started learning about all of the problems with a lot of conventional personal care products. And there were these like very small niche boutiques that were opening up, mostly online at the time. And I basically just kind of fell in love with this world of artisanal, handcrafted, luxury beauty products in the realms of skincare, makeup, body care. And I was also getting very deep into the YouTube beauty community, which was like a whole thing at the time too. This is all going on when I was in graduate school as well. So this was sort of my creative outlet at the time. And I am someone that has always needed a lot of creative outlets to balance the hyper academic background that I come from. And I just saw that there were not a lot of people that were making content. There were a lot of people making beauty content. There weren't a lot of people making videos specifically about organic beauty products or clean, green, whatever you want to call it. It has so many labels. So I had graduated. I earned my PhD in 2013. And in the spring of 2014, decided to just take the plunge and start recording videos on my iPhone. I had no idea how to edit video footage or how to do any of it really, but it was sort of a very soup to nuts process of teaching myself and building kind of a blogger presence for myself through YouTube and blogging to some extent. And yeah, fast forward now 6 years, I decided that I wanted to add a podcast to my suite of offerings, mostly because I have benefited so much from podcasts. And I think that they're such an accessible way for people to consume content and learn. And it, my appreciation for podcasts went to this whole other level when I had a baby in November of 2018. So I'm the mother to an amazing 20-month-old little boy. But as anyone that has had a baby will know, you need to be hands-free all the time. And you get nap trapped by them and you're laying with them for long periods of time. And it can be very idle time. So, I mean, podcasts have just been my companion really on long stroller walks, on naps, on bedtimes, like all of it, even doing just mundane chores around the house. And yet again, I found that there was not a lot of people in the beauty space podcasting about things that I am interested in personally and listening to. There are some very well-known and good beauty podcasts, but they honestly are mostly run by beauty magazine editors. So it's kind of a different perspective. So I just felt like there was really an opportunity for me to translate some of my video content and put it in podcast form, and also as that for that to be an opportunity for me to have conversations with people, interviews with brand founders, formulators, shop owners, fellow bloggers, people that are very artistic and creative in the beauty space. So that's what I did. I launched the podcast at the end of 2019, right before the new year. So I've been going, I totally lose track of time. It's been about 6 months. I just published my 32nd episode. I release new episodes every Monday, and it's been completely fulfilling and amazing, and I love it.
Now, for the folks that aren't familiar with the term, what is green or clean beauty?
Yeah, so it's it's a very big field, but it was born out of this idea that most personal care products, so, you know, anything from the toothpaste you brush your teeth with, to the lotion you put on your skin, to the makeup you put on your face, that there are a lot of chemicals in these products, and the United States has sort of a notorious under-regulation of chemicals in personal care products. There's a lot of statistics that compare how much more regulation is in place, for example, in the EU versus the US. And sometimes there's some problems with those comparisons, but you know, I'm sure that people have probably heard in just sort of the mainstream media about parabens, for example. Parabens are often used to preserve products, but they also can have endocrine disrupting. They can accumulate in the body and mess with your hormones. And when you're like in one product, it's not a problem, but when all of your personal care products have petrochemicals and potential endocrine disrupting chemicals in them, it can just add to someone's body burden of what their body can process in an effective way. So it's not to create fear. And I think that that's something that organic beauty has been somewhat struggling with, because in addition to just talking about the products, I often like to delve into some of the problematics and the discussions and the debates that happen between conventional beauty and green beauty. But green beauty has really become, it's like the organic foods movement of the beauty industry. It's a lifestyle choice. It's also become a way for people to support small businesses, often women-owned businesses, small artisan makers. It's like going to your local farmer's market and getting to know the person behind the brand. The things are not necessarily mass-produced. A lot of times they're handmade, very transparent with ingredients. So it's a lot of things, but the basis of it is really reducing your body burden. And it becomes a lifestyle choice akin to choosing to eat organic food, for example.
How do you find some of these smaller businesses so that you can know more about their products? I mean, that was one thing that really, I was like, how in the world does she find all these products?
Well, I'm an enthusiast, so it's like a hobby for me to find and discover new brands. But the easiest way is to go to your local health food store or even Whole Foods. Often Whole Foods across the country will sometimes carry local brands, but it's just a way to get acquainted with what the products are like. And then from there, if you're into perusing health food stores, there's a number of, unless you live in a major metropolitan area, it can be hard to find a brick and mortar eco beauty store to go into, although they do exist. If you're in New York City, California, we have a couple here in Chicago. So there's a store called Credo Beauty, which is, I think, in several different US metropolitan areas. Beauty Heroes is an online boutique that I've worked with for a number of years. So I would be happy to also send you a list of online retailers that you could include in the show notes for people to just start online perusing this stuff, because if you have any interest in beauty products, you will get sucked down a rabbit hole and have a wish list like a mile long, because the products are just so beautiful and they really draw you in.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Let's get that list.
Definitely.
And speaking of which, I'm sure you probably have a couple of favorite products.
Oh,
You
yes.
want to share some of those with us?
My favorite thing to do is to just talk about beauty products, which is why why I started my channel in the first place. So yes, I can talk about products ad nauseum, but when I was thinking about what to suggest for your audience, I just think, well, actually, I want to start with my personal favorite thing, which is this practice of herbal body oiling. So I don't know if you're familiar with the practice of self-massage in Ayurveda. It's called Abhyanga, where you take, it can be a room temperature oil or sometimes warmed up, and you just give yourself at the end of the day after a bath or a shower, you give yourself a self-massage with an oil. And the concept of herbal body oiling means infusing either a whole plant or dried plant herb into a carrier oil and applying that all over the body. And it's very, very soothing and calming to the nervous system. So especially since having a baby, I've been very into body care. It's kind of the process, I think, of being pregnant and giving birth, and then the transition to motherhood is a very embodied process. So I've just had a different body awareness since having a baby, and so I've long had an interest in skincare and makeup, but body care has really taken on this increased salience since becoming a mother. So I just find if I'm going to do something at the end of the day, herbal body oiling is so amazing. So I'm actually taking an online course right now to learn how to make my own herbal body oils. But I recently purchased some from a company called Mythic Medicine. She's a small herbal medicine maker out of Northern California, and she actually has a podcast as well, Medicine Stories, that's been very influential for me. So I just wanted to share that as a resource. And then for skincare, I always like to recommend, and for cleansing is my favorite step of the skincare routine. I think at the end of the day, even if you don't wear makeup, you're just wearing maybe a sunscreen or a tinted moisturizer or something, cleansing your face at the end of the day is a ritual I cannot do without. It's like non-negotiable. Even when my baby was 4 weeks old and I was literally sleeping 4 hours a night, I was still cleansing my face at some point before going to bed. And I'm a really big fan of oil or balm cleansing, which, if anyone's new to that, it's this idea that you basically cleanse your face with oil and you remove it with a warm washcloth, with the idea that oil attracts oil. So it's very deep cleansing to the pores. It's a very therapeutic experience. You get to massage your face. The warm washcloth feels like you're having a spa experience at home. It's so amazing. So my favorite one is from this very niche luxury company out of the UK. It's called Inlight Beauty. And they make this absolutely amazing cleansing balm. It comes in a little jar. I actually just did a brand review of this whole brand on my YouTube channel. And it's a little bit of a higher price point, but for me, it lasts a long time. And it's just this daily indulgence that I love so, so much. At a lower price point, there's this wonderful brand called Live Botanical, Live, and she does a really beautiful, it's a rinsable cleansing oil. So if you want the cleansing oil experience, but something that's going to emulsify and rinse clean, she does a really beautiful one. And then the other thing that I wanted to say if you're just getting started in a skincare routine, another nice place to invest is in a serum. And these can be oils or non-oil serums. I'm personally a really big fan of face oil. So another brand I've been really into lately, I actually just interviewed this formulator on my own podcast. The company's called Earthwise Beauty. They're based out of Spokane, Washington. And the founder, Ava, is, in addition to, she's been making artisanal luxury skincare for 15 years. And more recently, in the last 3 or 4 years, has been, she has a sister company all about flower essences, flower and gem essences, which is a form of energy medicine. And I've been working with those more myself too. And they're just, I don't know, I've been having my own kind of awakening to herbalism in the plant world. So if you're into all of that and that resonates, Earthwise Beauty is so amazing. They do 5 different oils in the range, or like oil serums. And I think you can't go wrong with any of them. I could keep going, but I'll leave you with that.
Fantastic. And it's funny because that resonates with me a little bit, because I've been studying more Taoist stone medicine as of late, which is similar to Chinese herbal medicine, but instead of using herbs, you're actually using stones, and then vibrationally infusing the energetics of the stone into water, and then either consuming that internally, or using the stones, placing them on specific acupuncture points. Fascinating
So
stuff.
fascinating. Yeah, it's obviously the same idea with the flower and gem essences. And yeah, that idea of working with the energy bodies is like, it's very, very appealing to me. It has been for a long time. And to find people that are working with it in a way that has a lot of depth and integrity and resonance is, it can take some time to seek that out, but there are some really amazing people out there doing amazing work in this area.
Yes, indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to switch it up a little bit here, Mercedes.
Okay.
What is your definition of Foxy? What does being Foxy mean to Mercedes?
I thought about this because I knew you were going to ask me this question. I was even talking to my husband about it last night. And I just have to answer in a way that's authentic to me, right? So for me, and we didn't really get into this, but I'm a very bifurcated person. I've experienced my life in a very bifurcated way. My parents were college professors, so I grew up in this really academic environment with a lot of pressure to excel, but I always had these interests that were not necessarily acceptable interests to have. Like being interested in beauty is often seen as being very frivolous. So I've kind of had to play these multiple roles in my life. And when I think about what being Foxy means to me, it means doing the work to cultivate those parts of myself that are intrinsic, that are not part of my social conditioning, that are not what I had to do to fulfill these other social roles, but bringing out that unique part of myself and expressing it. So that's really what I tried to do, or am in the process of trying to do with L'Amour et la Musique and my podcast. And I think when you are, and people do it different ways, you know, it could be your work, it could be your business, it could be just a passion project that you do just for yourself. You could choose to share it with the world. But I think if you do share that part of yourself with the world and people resonate with it, to me, that's like the Foxy element. Like someone's going to be intrinsically, inherently attracted to you being you. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It made sense in my head.
Yeah. Well, and that was kind of the goal of this show. In my mind, we're talking about that unique, what I would say is divinely gifted or created within you, that unique personal power
Yes.
that is just because I'm speaking specifically to women, it's innately divinely feminine.
Mm-hmm.
So when one taps into that, then it creates this wonderful polarization of energy that then allows for attraction,
Mm-hmm.
and not necessarily sexual, but as in charisma,
Mm-hmm.
and drawing people to you because of just that magnetism that you've allowed yourself to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And that I think that yeah, you said it perfectly. And as someone that has had to do the work to pull that out, I mean, and this kind of is coming back to your initial question, is this something that you chose or that you chose you? It's kind of both, right? It's something that I chose to cultivate and it's always been there, but I could have easily tried to just ignore it and gone about and try to get a tenure track professorship. But I didn't want to do that. So here I am raising my son and trying to, put out meaningful content in the world that benefits people in some way.
Who would you say is Foxy in your world?
Oh my gosh. Well, if I'm going by my definition of someone that is truly being themselves, um I mean it's very weird to think. I mean, my son is honestly sort of my biggest inspiration, and children are so. I think being a parent is such such a gift of an experience because I get to see my son grow and develop, and they're so exactly who they are as babies. They haven't gotten kind of mucked up by the world yet. So my son, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily attribute the word Foxy to him, but he's such a beacon of light and joy and just totally the light of my life. So yeah, and then I guess I would say too that I've just met so many inspiring people through the work that I do. And whenever I encounter, someone that has a beauty brand and the brand is an expression of them and it's just taken so much hard work. And I mean, I feel like at the amount of time that I've been doing this and the people that I know in this space, I think maybe it's this way for any entrepreneur, but you don't sleep very much and you work really hard. But when you're working towards something that you're willing to forsake other things for, and it's that expression of yourself, to me, I guess that's being Foxy.
Amen to that.
Mhm.
How can people find your website, your podcast? If they want to work with you, how can they find you?
Sure, I'm on a lot of different platforms. My website is kind of my uh, home base. It's l'amorelamusique.com. You can find my podcast there. There's a podcast tab at the top. You can also search Your Purpose is Beauty in any of the major podcast players or stream it on my website. I have, I think at this point, close to a library of 400 videos on YouTube, which you can find at youtube.com/l'amorelamusique/videos. I think I'll send you the exact link. And then I'm on Instagram, just at L'Amore La Musique. I am DM friendly, so I'm happy to accept DMs. I know some people are weird about that, but I'm very active on there. I do a lot of Instagram stories. And then I also have a Patreon community that I've been building over the last 2.5 years. For anybody that doesn't know, Patreon is I don't know, I don't really like to use the word crowdfunding, but it's a platform where you can donate to support independent creatives or content makers that you like, and they often offer bonus content, which I offer quite a bit of bonus content. So the first Monday of every month is an exclusive to Patreon podcast episode. I do a private video there every month, and I do live streams every Friday morning. So I'm very active over there. And I chose to go on Patreon because there was kind of this fork in the road for me where all bloggers were starting to take on a ton of sponsored work and get paid to post something, get paid to make a video about something, and I just really didn't want to do that. It felt like it was corrupting the journalistic bend that I feel like I've always had towards this world. So Patreon was my choice to raise funds to invest back into the podcast, and mostly the podcast. I have a sound editor for my podcast, so I'm happy to support him. He's wonderful. And then, equipment upgrades and doing this kind of work obviously takes some resources. So it's just turned into a very wonderful community that I'm super thankful for. So those are kind of all the main ways to find me.
Fantastic. Well, there you go, ladies. Check out Mercedes wherever you can find her on all of those platforms. Definitely check out her Patreon. Your Purpose is Beauty podcast. I mean, just the title alone drew me to the podcast. I don't know if you've read Stacey Eldridge's book. It's called Captivating. And it has to do with it's got kind of a Christian bent to it, but it's basically about uh, divine femininity. And in that book, she says that God basically created women expressly as a reflection of beauty. And so when I saw that title, I went, "Oh my gosh, this lady gets it." And so I tuned in, and yes, you have an amazing podcast, and all you listeners out there, tune into Mercedes podcast. It is fantastic. So
Thank you so
Mercedes,
much.
thank you
Thank you.
so much for taking the time. I appreciate you bringing more of this wonderful content into the world.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me.